you may start.
Good evening, everyone. This is Jennifer Gigi Ferguson, candidate for U.S. Senate. Tonight, I am here interviewing Melissa Rasmussen on Gigi for Senate. How are you doing, Melissa?
Oh, just wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. So, this is the info that I have on Melissa. And so, where we go tonight, we have no idea. We're just going to enjoy it. Um, Melissa Rasmussen works in community development, ecological design, and sustainable infrastructure, planning with the goal of increasing dignity, resilience, and the opportunity to live a creative life for all people everywhere. She is particularly concerned with low income and underserved communities, both here in the United States and abroad in her heart's home in West Africa. Melissa is currently part of a team providing consulting services to Quilpie Village, a tiny house community for the homeless in Olympia, Washington, where she is also a student and mother to a kindergartner. Her goal is to foster a green and verdant world of dignity and justice for all. Now, when Melissa says she's a student, I want you to understand Melissa's working on her master's in what is that, Melissa?
It's going to be my master's in oh my goodness, School of Community and Regional Planning.
Okay, and that will mean?
That will mean exactly what it sounds like. We have a world in transition. We have massive inequality. We have climate change we have to contend with that's going to be getting more and more complex and unpredictable in its effects. And the more we can cultivate resilience in our communities, and the more we can cultivate robust infrastructure that's going to be able to stand up to a lot of challenges, the better off we're going to be. So I'm positioning myself to do some of that planning and hopefully help where I can.
So this weekend, well, let's start with what's going on in Olympia. You've been working with that for a while.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, lots of cool stuff is going on in Olympia. The particular angle I'm taking, I'm coming out of the Evergreen State College, and I'm thank you so much, Gigi, for the flattery, but I have to correct you. Yes, I'm 26 years old, but no, I'm not in my master's yet. I'm finishing up a bachelor's there. Yeah, no.
Okay, I thought you were in your master's program, but that's okay. Your brain is almost PhD, young lady.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. But one of the advantages of being at the Evergreen State College is they have the Center for Sustainable Infrastructure hosted there. They also have legislative internships and coordinate a lot with Olympia legislators for the entire state of Washington, because the Capitol, you can kind of see, not quite, but you can almost see from the campus. So it's a place where there's a lot going on, and opportunities to influence legislators and have ideas uptaken are pretty broad. So this, most recently, I've been working with Quixote Village. So Quixote like Don Quixote?
Okay, Quixote. I didn't say that right. I knew it was wrong.
That's okay. They're a fascinating project. About 12 years ago, Camp Quixote was a tent community of people living unsheltered, and they had to be shuffled around from parking lot to parking lot throughout the city of Olympia, moving every 3 months. Ooh. Now, a really strong community of faith-based people, starting with the Unitarian Universalists, were willing to host them in their parking lots and actually round up the volunteer staff required to have somebody on site for them 24 hours a day, 3 months at a time. And then they'd have to leave, and they'd have to clean up the parking lot, and it was a bit of a hassle for, like 7 years.
What? So what you're saying is the people were allowed to stay there 3 months at a time?
Yes, and even that was a variation of city ordinance.
And then they'd have to pick up and move again?
Right, for years on end. With no hygiene services, no garbage services, none of the infrastructure that we take for granted.
Okay.
And it helps reduce the level of stress in our lives and enable us to think about long-term survival, about education, about maybe doing something more than just coping and getting by day to day. I can tell you this because I've been living and working with some of the people who were there.
Okay.
Eventually, with that volunteer staff of hundreds, they were able to basically mob city council meetings and state legislative assembly and say, look, we got to change this. Give us money to change this. Because here's a factoid for you. Every person living unsheltered on the street costs city and state services $47,000 a year.
What?
Emergency shelter, in medical care, in police services. It's an incredible cost to society that's almost invisible. You know, they're not free. And
Yet
someone has an economic incentive behind it, as well as a human one.
Yet we hear people constantly saying, I don't want to take care of them because they're lazy. I don't want to provide this and help them to stay lazy. And you and I both know people are not homeless because they're lazy.
Unfortunately not. It would be so much easier to write it off if they were. You're talking to somebody who has been there. My good friend and teammate has been there. My husband has been there.
I've been there.
You've been there, yeah. Well, we run up against statistics, right? There's almost no state in the union where you can afford a 2-bedroom apartment, just basic rent, on less than 2 full-time minimum wage jobs. That's unconscionable. And I mean, Martin Luther King fought for that. He's like, we need a living wage. You need to be paid honestly for your decent work to be able to support a family. And that's the only way any social structure, any society is going to have any strength to it at all. That's the only way you're going to be raising resilient kids who have who are fed and housed enough to be able to focus and concentrate in school and become creative, productive workers and members of society. America has been eroding our own future tax base for decades now.
Yes.
And what we're seeing as the fruits of that is people who, okay, so here's a story for you. Nice young woman named Katie. She is exactly within 3 months of my age. I met her. Incidentally, she's white. Incidentally, she's 8 months pregnant. I met her standing at an interchange down in Olympia, holding a sign saying, please help, homeless. And I couldn't not just stop and help her, so I bought her Taco Bell, and she sat in the car with me and my daughter, and we talked for a little bit. And she's a sweet young woman, fine lady. She used to work at the local community college daycare. And 3 months ago, she and her husband of 5.5 years had an apartment and a job. And they had a friend they were rooming with, and that friend started pocketing their share of rent. So the three of them got evicted, right? Then husband injured his knee while roofing. That was his job. Decent income, right? And then their car transmission blew out and it got impounded. They were living in their car, and then they didn't have anywhere to live. They lost everything within 3 months. And here they are with a baby on the way. And they had been as adequately stable as a millennial can reasonably expect to be these days.
And and I've recently heard less than a quarter of Americans have enough money in savings, even $400 in savings, to be able to sustain themselves if something happens. So if we're looking at it takes 2 adults working 2 full-time jobs at minimum wage, and we have less than a fourth of Americans with $400 in their savings account, what you just described is an atrocity.
Yes, I can't but agree. It's an atrocity that doesn't have a face on it, aside from hers, and she's dirty and a little smelly and living on the street. And so it's easy to point the finger of blame for that atrocity at the one face we can see. But it's structural, it's systemic, and it's been decades of action and inaction and wrong action.
Yes.
And while we're at it, just speaking as a college student, there was a recent study showing that about, 36% of college students at 4-year colleges are housing insecure. Over half are a little bit food insecure. It's not okay. How well,
it's not, and see, me coming from a psychological perspective, we're not meeting Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The people can't even meet that bottom level in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if people can't meet even that bottom level, how are we expected to have them move up anywhere and make, make it up? If you're smelly, well, first of all, just being pregnant, she's not going to be able to find a job
Yeah.
because most places will not hire you because of the risk. Then she's smelly, she's dirty. What is she going to do? She may be able to get into, she may, I said, be able to get into a homeless shelter. But
She's
then,
on the list for housing. That's all I can say.
you know, but sometimes they won't let the husband in,
Right.
and for me, that goes back to in the 50s when they started their welfare program. And with the welfare program, the men were not allowed to be in the homes for the women to get welfare. And they had those midnight raids with social workers and police officers that came into the home. And if the man was found in the house, the family was taken off of welfare. And yet the man couldn't find a job. And sometimes the mother was already working 2 and 3 jobs to take care of the kids. And so that's part of why I'm running, actually, because our society, there's not been a pay raise, since 1970 on a national level? And people
It's
can't meet basic needs. People, the dollar, what people make and the value is now it's definitely, I'm looking at the screen, it's no longer like this. It's now like this. And it's getting worse. And I don't I don't understand how our government can continue to do this. So, is there a way to get her and her family into Coyote Village? And I want to hear more about Coyote Village.
that's the next place I'm going to take you. So probably most people listening to this may have heard that there's a new phenomenon as making the rounds as a way to address homelessness, and that is building small, like well built but inexpensive tiny house shelters. This concept, tiny houses took off as a thing in the cultural moment, as a way to downsize and to say, wow, we really don't need all of this space and all of the maintenance and all of the ecological cost that goes along with it for these huge houses. We can live more lightly and still be satisfied, still be happy, still be having fulfillment in our lives. In fact, maybe more so. And some bright folks said, wow, that could work for all these people who don't have any place to go and all these vacant lots that we've got in our cities where nobody wants to live, right?
Right.
So there are now at least half a dozen, I don't know how many, of these tiny house villages all around the country. There's one or two that I know of in Seattle. Quixote Village is one in Olympia. There's one in Austin I know of. There's one in Milwaukee. But Quixote Village was the first and so far the only 4 years ago to receive public money to be founded and established. All the others have been privately donated one way or another.
Okay.
So they're unique in that way. What happened was that tent community of 30 people, more or less, who were self-governing for years as they had to move between these parking lots. Members of the community formed a nonprofit to support them, an organization called Panza that's just changed its name to Quixote Communities. And Panza did the advocacy. Panza hired the architects. Panza negotiated with the city to get a donation of land. Panza fought in court to be able to establish this village on this piece of land in an industrial area. And long story short, they won. Wonderful people, by the way. I really enjoy the time I get to spend with them. But they built 30 tiny house cottages. And this was the dream of the residents, by the way. This wasn't Panza's idea. This was the residents' idea. They built 30 tiny cottages and one large community center. And it's still operating. They're going on 4 years on. Now, they provide both transitional housing and permanent supportive housing. So people can, they've got a place. They've got a shower and a kitchen and a bed and a door that they can lock. They have that first basement level of Maslow's hierarchy taken care of. And from there, they've gotten jobs, they've gotten HUD vouchers, they've gotten Social Security, they've gotten back in touch with family members. They go out have dinner out on the town sometimes, and a couple of them are going back to school. So volunteering with the local elementary school, like the stories are just fantastic. And oh, by the way, they grow a lot of food for the local food bank in their garden.
Wow.
It's a beautiful place. And
Wow.
it's fantastic. I can say, on their behalf a little proudly that only 10 of the original 30 residents are there. The other 20 have moved on and up and out into their own apartments and their own lives. They've re-entered society. Quixote gave them what they needed to stabilize and then to progress.
And see, that is to me even what low income housing should be.
Oh, absolutely.
To me, it's not that we need to continue building low income housing. It's that we should do the wraparound services so that people can move into low income housing, but are able to gain what they need in order to be able to move out. And when they move out, other people can move in. Except
Exactly.
I also have to realize that at the rate housing is going up and even apartments are going up and wages are not going up, I guess we do need to build more sustainable low income housing. But I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but to me, $1,200 a month for low income housing is not low income.
No, that's not low income. In Olympia, you're lucky if you can find a room for less than 500 a month,
A
and
room?
even that's
Did you say a room? Okay, it looks like we've somewhat lost Melissa here for a second. So, one of the things we're really trying to get across, a lot of individuals believe, including our president, that people need to stop being lazy and get up and go to work. Are you back with us, Melissa? And it's not about being lazy and getting back to work. It's about the systemic problems in our society. It's about the runaway inequality, where wages have not gone up since 1970, where I talk to people whose wages or rent is going up every 6 months or every 9 months. And these people are supposed to be able to, I don't know, stabilize. That's not going to work. And I also look at the women who have been on TANF or low income, and people are, the government is helping to subsidize their child care. And because they get a 25 cent an hour pay raise, 25 cent an hour pay raise, their child care jumps from, 100 and something dollars a month to 500 and something dollars a month. And so some ladies have had to turn the pay raise down. I was speaking with one lady. Her job cut her days back in order that she fit into the category that the state wants, and the state will continue to help subsidize her rent. But this is how our economy is going, and people don't seem to understand, people don't seem to get it, that it's not by choice. People are not homeless by choice. Let's think about that a little bit. Unless someone has a mental health illness, unless someone has served and has PTSD, they are not homeless by choice. And I also remember hearing about a man in one of the shelters here in Tacoma who works a 40-hour-a-week job. Now, hear me. He works a 40-hour-a-week job. He's single, and he has to live in a homeless shelter. I don't know about you, but that's a problem for me. That's a serious problem for me. And it's a problem that those who are sitting in office don't seem to be really concerned about. And I say that because if they were really concerned about it, they would do something about it. And the fact that they're not really concerned about it, they're not doing anything. I mean, let's just look at you and I. If you have an issue with something, are you going to just let it be? Or are you going to try to do something to fix it? Granted, there are some people who are just going to sit back and cry and say, woe is me. But I think for the most part, we're going to fight back. We're going to try to do something that will bring us back to normalcy. I want to try here and see if Melissa's trying to get in, and see where she is, if I can. Oh, we lost her for that time, and I was hoping she'd be able to get back in without me having to leave off. Yes. And I wonder if her phone died, because I did remember hearing her say something about that. So she's coming, currently she's driving back from Oregon, where she has been all weekend working with another small village that they're building, or a small community they're building for homeless people in Oregon. They've worked with a number of people there, and she was going to give us some of the information there. Next week, she hopefully, if we don't get her back in, we will have her back next week, because Melissa has been in Uganda, I want to say. She and her father and maybe her husband have worked on doing sustainable growing, because people in Uganda have had problems. Melissa, is that you?
I'm back. I am so
Yes.
sorry.
No, I'm glad to have you back. I've been trying to fill in while we try to get you back on. So I'm glad to have you back on.
Here I am. My phone was drawing power faster than it was able to charge, and so I'm on my friend's phone now, but I'm here.
Okay. So I was talking a little bit about what you were doing in Oregon this weekend, but if you wanted to go on any more on Keoki, or we can go on about what you were doing this weekend.
Sure. Yeah, I'll take it from Quixote and expand from there.
Okay.
All right. So, having experienced significant success, including legislative success, including success with their people, they are now expanding, and that's why Panza became Quixote communities, so that now they can found first a second, then a third, and a fourth, and hopefully a fifth, sixth, seventh, and 12th village, right? So
right.
they're
Awesome.
Focused specifically, thank you, on homeless veterans, and it's going to be out in Ording, near Puyallup in central Washington. Southern Washington. Yeah, it's beautiful. They got a section next to the old soldiers' home that's owned by the VA,
yes.
And it's got a little lake. It's lovely. But there's a bit of a catch. Earlier, you said two particular phrases. You said we need to focus on sustainable, affordable housing.
Yes.
Those two turn out to be very different things. Quixote Village was publicly funded with, frankly, plenty of money, which is good. And what they wound up doing was building what the architects told them to build, which was fairly conventional, pretty normal, stick-built housing with the insulation and all of the stuff. That's where my good friend, whose phone I'm using, Aaron Sauerhoff, came in this quarter at Quixote. Aaron's an ecological builder, so he knows a lot about passive house design. He knows a lot about air leakage and infiltration and where the mold is likely to happen and what the drawbacks are to standard frame and construction. So the first thing he did this quarter, as part of this internship, was bring in someone to do a professional blower door test on the community building and the tiny houses, which said, wow, you're losing a lot of heat. You're going to have a lot of mold. You're not really providing a healthy community. Things could be done better, right? This is going to be true, by the way, of almost all new construction in the United States. Just the codes and the standards and the understanding of how to build healthy homes hasn't reached public awareness. It hasn't reached the regulatory level. And when it comes to providing stocks of housing, the city and the public interests are like, okay, we need housing. Great, build housing. The developers are in it, by and large, to make money. And it's the tenants or the owners who buy the houses, potentially at inflated prices, by the way, and then are stuck with them, paying on that debt, paying on that mortgage, and living in these homes, which requires, in the case of a house built like this, ongoing really high utilities payments. The tenant who's stuck with that, or the owner. There's no one advocating for long-term durability, healthiness, sustainability of housing, and that's a real missing piece for us. There's some starting to address that. The Northwest Eco Builders Guild is one. There are others around, but that's something we need to pay attention to as we push for low-income housing. It needs to be sustainable as well, or we are failing in our human duty to them and to ourselves, to our communities, in an ongoing way.
So I need you to go over again what they found wrong ecologically for these homes, which makes them not sustainable and a quality. The air is getting through the doors. The air is getting through the windows.
Yeah. So here's a simple example. When you've got a house built with studs and then drywall, you fill in insulation between the studs, right? And the insulation is supposed to prevent the heated air inside from getting out to the cold outside, or vice versa when it's the opposite season.
Yes.
But if you're not careful, and most people are not careful, those studs act as a bridge. They act as a thermal bridge from the outside to the inside. So you're going to be losing a lot of heat just for the lack of even a quarter inch of insulated tape on those studs between the stud and the drywall. Without that, it's just, it's like sticking a metal spoon into a hot saucepan. It just carries the heat away. This is completely normal. It's standard, it's conventional, but the insulation winds up doing much less of a good job when you're not careful about this one particular thing. So fortunately, lots of people have been thinking about this for a long time, and you can get what's called passive house certification. And passive house design just says, okay, we're going to totally seal the building envelope, and we're going to be very careful about our ventilation. So we're going to make sure that no air is leaking in any particular way. We're not just losing heat and therefore losing dollars and heating the sky. And when we do carefully, specifically in one location, exchange out the interior air for the exterior air, because you need that for breathing. It's good stuff.
Yes.
We're going to do a heat recapture system that can get upwards, like the technology is really good now, upwards of 90% of the heat out of the air that's inside those houses gets recaptured. So the air coming out of the houses is used to heat the air coming in. So you're releasing cool air and you're warming the air that's coming in. So you can wind up for less than 5% more to build the house, greater cost to build the house up front. You can reduce your heating bills by 80% over the lifetime of that house. Now that is without getting into the chemical side of things and the sustainable materials side of things and the natural side of things. Just that. Just passive, just sealing the envelope.
Okay, so answer me this. Let's say someone has a home that's 30, 40 years old.
Uh-huh.
Can they take that home and do this type of insulation to it? I'm thinking our seniors, I'm thinking the companies where the electricity is going up. Can they insulate their homes there?
Can I bring on a guest who knows more about this
Bring
than I
her
do?
on. Yes.
All right, bring him on. Give me just a second here. Let me catch him up for a moment here. Got a second?
Yeah.
All right. Gigi, this is Aaron Sauerhoff.
Hi, Aaron.
All right. Aaron is an ecological builder who's just been doing this internship with Quixote Village with me, and we've just been talking about passive house design and construction and proper insulation and how studs can act as a thermal bridge and really undermine the efficiency of what you're putting into the house. Gigi's question was, what if you've got something that's 30, 40 years old? Can you retrofit it? What can you do to improve it in that situation?
If you're already to tear off some of the siding, it would be that's a good time to put some foam on the outside is one possible solution, and then make an airtight envelope around that. So using watertight membranes and specialized tape that seal all the penetrations, and then install a heat ventilation recovery unit, an HRV, which replaces all the air inside the structure and captures the heat on its way, and transfers it into the incoming air. That would
So
be one possible retrofit for.
okay, what about the homes where the foundation is concrete, and maybe the concrete comes 3-4 feet above ground?
What about? What's the question? I'm sorry.
Well, okay. Let's say someone has a home where there's concrete and the concrete comes 3-4 feet above ground. Is there a way to save on insulation or to fix the potential molding problem on those homes?
There are foams that you can install around concrete. So yes, they're a pretty high embodied carbon, polystyrene rigid foam, but that would be the most practical solution for that.
Okay, see, you began to speak French to me. Polygyro, all of that.
Foam, basically a specialized construction type of styrofoam, basically.
Okay, so would they put that on the inside of that concrete or on the outside of the home?
Ideally, it wants to be on the outside, but you can put it on the inside. If you have a concrete basement space that goes below grade, it's ideal to then put it on the inside, yes.
Okay, all right. And I'm trying to think of other questions. Melissa, what other questions could you potentially?
If I were you, I would say, so Aaron, there's the second village coming up. What are you doing to help them do that more sustainably so they don't have a $27,000 a year electric bill?
Yeah.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. What I'm finding in my academic research is that no matter how well you insulate your space,
yes,
about 80% of your heat is lost through air infiltration. So we call that a leaky envelope. It's all the cracks and seams and all the penetrations around the doors and the electrical outlets. Every time that you have a penetration, you have air leaking into the envelope. And when the wind blows, it takes the air right out of the building. So a solution that we're finding in the passive house world is that you want to make the envelope, the enclosure around your building, as airtight as possible. But what the problems that emerge from that are humidity and moisture problems. You need your space to breathe, right? So
yes,
you have to also then include a mechanical system that ventilates the space. And these HRVs, these heat ventilation recovery units, like I was saying before, they remove the air from the building and flow it over. They remove the heat, they recapture the heat before it leaves the building and transfers it to the incoming air before it goes in the building. And so you have a very efficient system that not only replaces all the air inside the building every couple hours, but it recaptures that heat and transfers it into the incoming air. And the modern efficient ones are about 94% efficiency, which is astonishing.
And how much is that going to add to the cost of the home?
the upfront cost, the new passive house construction companies, they've been getting really good and efficient with their process, and they're finding between a 3 to 6% upcharge for passive house design. So that's putting a little bit more attention into the membranes, the skin of the building, basically. And so it's only going to cost between 3 and 6% upfront, but then will save you at least 80% in your energy usage.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm in my mind. See, I'm a visual person, so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the air that comes through side doors, front doors, and I'm married to, I call him MacGyver, and so MacGyver, as the kids were little, were at taking like tires and cutting them up and putting tires on one side of the door and the other side out. So when the kids come in, the door just smacks right back shut. And then in the wintertime, he would put towels and different things around the garage door to keep the heat in downstairs. And so basically, what I believe I'm hearing you say is in the new construction, they're setting this up where the people won't need a MacGyver. It's already been built into the construction. Am I correct?
That's right. You got it.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And so that now, are they going to, now you said they're doing that in Oregon.
Orting, village number 2.
Orting?
Yeah, village number 2.
Oh, okay. So it's in Washington. Awesome. I'm going to have to go out there. You're going to have to take me, you are going to have to take me out there.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I can see that.
All right.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, you're welcome to call in and ask questions at 609-807-2492. And I'm Jennifer G.G. Ferguson, candidate for United States Senate here in Washington State. And I have to admit, this wonderful young lady is part of my team.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. I get to hear about all of the wonderful things she's doing for our environment here in Washington and in Uganda. And I'm just so excited. And we'll at another time come back in and discuss worm boxes, where she has explained to me how. Let me let you explain worm boxes.
No, absolutely. I'd love to come back in and talk about that and a couple of other things. Passive house design is just the beginning. We can go so much more sustainable down the line. And when we get our buildings right, we can get our communities right. And when we get our large-scale energy systems right, we can really change the future of life on this planet. And yes, that's a tall statement, but I really believe it's true. But that applies too in our kitchens. If we can take our own food scraps, and eventually, if we're being really bold, what we know as sewage, and treat that in a way that keeps it biological and turns it into fertilizer, we can be growing our own food. We don't need to rely on big companies elsewhere destroying soil and pumping a bunch of chemicals into our food supply. We can be taking care of ourselves and our own health and getting the psychological benefits of raising food right where we live. So for that and a bunch of other things, including how all this relates to West Africa and East Africa and other places I've been and I'm fortunate enough to have colleagues, I would look forward to it, any opportunity.
Oh, and I'm looking forward to bringing you back. And sir, I thank you for the work that you're doing for our country and our environment. And can you give us just a little bit more about who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, I moved. I'm Aaron. I'm Aaron Sauerhoff. I moved out here from New York, New Jersey, a couple of years ago, wanting to learn a more natural way of building. And at the time, I had no idea what that would look like, but I just set my sails open and found myself out here partnered with a couple different local natural builders and mentors, and community just took me right in, and it has been a transformative time being here. And with my knowledge and expertise, now I'm getting really heavily involved in these next villages, and I'm just honored to be able to contribute everything that I know and continuing to learn every day. And so I just want to see this world be built in a more natural and ecologically minded way. So thank you for that.
And I'm going to say, for me, that is looking towards our future, towards that wonderful little girl that's running around you somewhere over there. I know Kai is around there. You know, for our children, for our grandchildren. Now, I'm one of the things that I say in my platform is unions need to begin to look at retraining their employees for the next step, because I'm a firm believer we have to move away from fossil fuels and all of this that's destroying our land and move towards a more green environment. But I'm also very concerned to make sure that their wages don't drop. They're still able to make their wages, and they're trained to make that transition. So from what you know, are the wages going to still be there? You're doing it right now. Are the wages going to still be there?
That's something I'm really passionate to. It's a workforce development, reentry, retraining.
Yes.
Has been becoming a huge passion of mine. And so a couple of years ago, I went to a work party for a natural building clay plaster sequence on this house, and I walked in, and everyone was barefoot, and there were kids running around, dogs running around in the yard, and there were elderly people in all around the room, and there were peoples of color and a couple indigenous peoples, and my heart just felt so fulfilled. And I looked at this environment, and I said, there's something here. There's something very sacred about this type of space right now. And I was asking, what is it about this process that is bringing all these different people together and allowing them to all get their hands onto this mud wall? I said, wow, can this be a solution for our future? Can this be something that we do more of? It brings people together, breaks down these barriers. We didn't even need to speak all the same. It was just so beautiful to see this. And so I hope that what I'm learning can be applied in that way. I really do.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. Can you bring Melissa back on? And I'm going to end the show. And I appreciate you for taking care of Kai while Melissa's been on here, and your phone, and just everything you both are doing. And I'll see if your schedules, Melissa, will allow you to come back, because right now really is the time for people to be planting. And your worm boxes are exactly what people need right now, if they're living in an apartment or if they even have land, to put this back into the land. And one of the things, I'm not sure if I received it from you or someone else, that said people who have food stamps can use food stamps to purchase seeds to grow their own food. And then their food will not have fertilizers, and they won't have all of these things. They'll be organic, they'll be healthy, and they'll see a difference in their children's health. I know this. They'll see a difference in their children's health. They'll see a difference in their children's attitude. They'll see a difference in how their children learn, how their brains function, just everything. All of that goes into a healthy body, a healthy mind. That's right. So I really want to thank you, both of you, for coming on tonight. And I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.
Us as well.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, and good night.
Take care.
And those who are watching, this again is Jennifer G.G. Ferguson saying thanks for watching again, and good night.